Okay, hey everybody. I'm with the writer, director, and star of the short film Velma, Scarlett Moreno. Hi, thanks for joining me. I
Hi,
appreciate it.
thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I really wanted to talk to you, especially to see a short film like this, just well produced, great story, well acted. I really wanted to talk to you. So let's just start off with the obvious. What is the story, and what was the inspiration behind the story of Velma?
So, Velma is a 1960s, late 1960s psychological thriller horror. And it's basically based on it's about, not based on a true story at all, but it's about a woman who sort of becomes so overtaken by her shame around sexuality and sex and being wanted as a sexual object that she develops a compulsion that is not necessarily acceptable.
Hmm. Okay. Yes, we'll leave it at that.
Yes.
Um, Now the thing is, so the first thing that strikes anyone who starts watching the film is it's a period piece. It's set in the '60s. You've got this incredible looking design, and I say that especially as a short film because I assume you didn't have a lot of money to make the film.
No.
So how did you pull that together? What were some of the keys?
So I tend toward period pieces with my work. I love 60s and 70s aesthetics. I was a stylist for 10 years, and my very good friend and I have an archive of vintage. So we have a ton of vintage clothes. So a lot of the pieces we had, but then we went to this like wonderful rental house here in LA as well. And, we pulled pieces that were stunners, I would say, and that like really put you in the era, right? And so you only need like 5 stunner pieces to be like, okay, this is 1965, if that makes sense. And then you can kind of play around with the rest of it. Same with the setting. I was so fortunate in that I found a location that already looked like that. That location was it came that way. Like the people that own the house live in that house the way it is. And like, that just struck me as like hilarious and amazing. Clearly they decorated it to make it a location for film and photo shoots, I'm sure. But when I walked into that house, I was like, oh my God, like this is Velma's house. And I think that was just like really lucky. That was the universe sending me a huge gift, because I knew I wanted to set it in 1965-ish, but I wanted the character to live in a place that is so beautiful that it's like disturbing, so that her outer world is so gorgeous that the juxtaposition between that and her inner world is like startling. And I think that was really important. So I guess a very long way to answer your question is that location, costume design can really just drive it home as far as a period piece. And then you can like cut corners elsewhere when you're dealing with a low budget short film.
Yeah. So I mean, we're in the process of pre-production. Did you find the place? So it was I guess ultimately the question was, had you not found the place, would it have radically changed the film? Or did you find the place and realize, okay, it did inspire you from there?
So I knew going in, like I wrote the script before I found the place, but I knew I wanted her to live in like a beautiful house. To be honest, what I imagined was like, I don't know if you've seen those old like Palm Springs houses that look, one room will be like all green shag carpeting, and like another room will be like pink, like curtains and satin everywhere. And I knew I just wanted something highly aesthetic. I was imagining something more mid-century, but when you find a gem like that, I did my research. I looked, I believe I found it on Gigster, this location. First, I looked on Peerspace, I looked at Gigster. I looked at a few different locations. One location I thought was going to be the one before I found this one was this beautiful house, very, very mid-century, but there was like a 2-story walk-up. And I was like, no way am I going to make my crew haul their equipment 2 stories. And I was like, this is not it. Like I knew because that you have to take into consideration if it's not a first floor entrance, like your crew is going to take much longer to load in and load out. We shot this movie in 2 days, so we didn't have a lot of time to waste as far as setup. So all that stuff goes into consideration. I walked into this house that I found, and it was the one, and I knew it was the one, and it just worked out.
All right. So again, one of the big reasons I wanted to talk to you was, you know, you made a short film, and we talked to a lot of indie and up and coming filmmakers who are in various stages. And for us, the big thing is, you know, if you want to be a filmmaker, make your movie, make a film. You know, you got your cell phone. You know, you can start from there. With VELMA, you know, clearly you're further down the road than the beginner, because of the way. I mean, quite frankly, the film looks wonderful. Looks fantastic.
Thank you.
So what is your journey? Who are you as a filmmaker, and where did you come from, and how did you get to this point?
So I made my first short film in 2013. It's called Viv 1.0, or They Must Have Forgotten. It's also set in the 60s. And we shot that movie guerrilla style. It was me and 3 girlfriends. My cinematographer, Kate Arizmendi, who is incredible. She's still doing amazing things. She's working on Succession. She worked on Dune 1, and she's just incredible. I was lucky enough to know her, you know, in our beginning days. And so me, her, and 2 other girlfriends shot Viv in a hotel. I won't name the hotel because I'll probably get in trouble, but we shot it guerrilla style. If you watch it, you'll know the hotel. And so I guess I would say that aesthetics have always been like that important to me, right? That like, no matter what the budget was, I believe my budget on that was like $2,000. No matter what the budget was, I was gonna like, I wanted it to look beautiful. There's something to me about telling, and I've said this in other places, but telling ugly stories or difficult stories in beautiful worlds. I think that juxtaposition is so cool, especially like as a woman, you know, like we're taught and sort of put upon these beauty standards, and so making my films beautiful and still telling truths that are hard to swallow is like part of what I love to do. So started with that one in 2013. And the reason I started was because I went to acting school. I went to NYU, graduated, moved here a year later, and I just kept hearing like, make your own work, make your own work. And this was in the like Tina Fey, Amy Poehler era, like when these women were starting to like really do that. And I was like, you know what, like if I want to play a weird character, maybe I'll just like write her. And that's how I fell in love with directing, is I started making movies for myself to act in. And then I just like found that I loved directing. I loved building worlds. I still love acting, but creating the whole world is so empowering to me that it just I fell in love with it. So started that way, made 3 short films a couple years in a row. And then I made my first feature on a show called Rebel Without a Crew, with Robert Rodriguez, 2017. The show came out in 2018. And the show was a 25th anniversary celebration of his movie El Mariachi. And so he picked 5 first-time feature filmmakers to make their movies the way he made El Mariachi, which was with a budget of $7,000 in 2 weeks. And he followed us around with the documentary crew, and it was wild. It was a crazy experience. I always say it was the hardest thing I've ever done and the most fun I've ever had. And I made my feature Phaedra. And it was wild. And I really resonate with what you said earlier about, you know, you have your phone, like go make your movie. I learned on Rebel that like you can find so much magic within these constraints, and you just can't let them like discourage you, because it really is where you find some of the coolest happy accidents, miraculous art that gets made that way. So that's my journey.
I mean, one thing we've been pushing a lot lately is it just seems like movies that have a $200 million budget feels lazy. The filmmaking feels lazy, and there's something about not having enough money that not only makes you a better filmmaker, but makes a better film. I do you feel that?
I feel like, you know, I think that for me as a millennial, I don't know, in the early 2000s, we had so much good like indie film. Like we had all this stuff that came out around the same time. Of course, we had like mumblecore, which is funny, but we had like Garden State, and then we had and then we got Little Miss Sunshine, and we got all these like incredible lower budget indie films. There was like an era for that. So I think I'm very influenced by that. And then, and of course there's always been blockbusters, right? There's always going to be that $2 million movie, or 2 million, LOL, $200 million movie. But yeah, I will say that like Hollywood makes a lot of giant budget films that are from already existing IP because they feel like it's a safe bet. And I think in indie film, you don't have the luxury of a safe bet or not. A safe bet doesn't really matter. So that's, I think, what the low budget magic comes from, is that a safe bet isn't what you're going for anyway. So it's kind of like when you have nothing to lose, like what can go wrong?
Yeah.
Like,
Because like I said, I think, I mean, you mentioned with this guerrilla style filmmaking, I think it forces you to see things differently, to make magic, and for some reason, it's like when you have too much money and it puts you in a position where you're not making magic,
because you have to answer to so many people, right? You have to answer
Absolutely.
you have to answer to the studio, you have to answer to the money, basically. So I do think there's this like freedom in indie film. One of my girlfriends she laughs at me because she's like, I don't know what you're gonna do when you do get the contract or whatever. She's like, you might not love that situation because you're gonna have to make some other people happy. And I always laugh. We'll see what we do.
We say it all the time. I mean, once you sign that contract, that's your first step toward compromise.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and look at like, Tangerine, the film from a few years ago that was shot on an iPhone, and then like, won all these awards and really was wonderful. And I don't know, there's so many examples we can look toward, but yeah, I do agree that sometimes, a lot of times, a $200 million budget doesn't make for the most magical experience.
Yeah. Now, one thing you talk about the love of directing, but it also sounds like you're doing a lot of producing as well. Or is it that you, I mean, one of the things that I find in common with amongst film students is that it's not necessarily what you learn in film school, but it's the people you surround yourself with. It's the filmmakers that you do favors for.
Yeah.
And it's a way, it's like as they go up, you go up with them.
Yeah.
So talk to me about, your experience of producing, and then maybe the team you formed over the years.
Yeah. So I do produce like all my own films so far. And, producing is not my favorite. I don't love it. That part is so stressful to me. I do it, and thankfully I've done it well so far, but so much of it does lie in like who you surround yourself with, who becomes your team, because as a director, you have to trust that these people can execute your vision. And when I say trust, I really mean trust. You got to let go, or else your directing suffers. You have to like parse it out. You have to allow the DP to do their job. You have to allow the art department to do their job, the costume designer to do their job. And like, I think when I was younger, it might have been a little harder to let go of those things, right? Like, and as you go, you realize like, oh, well, my directing, my acting, will only be stronger if I let those things go and really allow these people to shine and do their thing and like make their art as well within these worlds. And so you want to build a team that you trust. And I think it's just about like, I don't even want to say trial and error, but if you find someone that you love to work with, that you jive with, that your visions match up, I mean, that is rare. So I would say like you want to keep them close, right? Like that's for sure. And when you start with low budgets, of course, you do each other favors. And like, if you need, if a DP that I've worked with needs me to go style something last minute, like, sure, I'll be there, because I understand the value of having that person on your team, on your side. And I do think, especially with independent filmmaking, that's super important. I think trust is the biggest word I can go with here, because you just want a team that you can trust like fully.
Okay. Okay, and the last question: where next? Where are you going next? Where's the dream going?
Oh, the dream. I mean, the dream is to make another feature. I'm starting writing that, and I love the concept. I won't share it yet,
Yeah,
but
so.
but I'm excited about that. That's my goal. Hopefully, within the next year or two, is to get that rolling. However that may be, you never know with indie film how it's going to happen, right? You never know who's
Mm-hmm.
going to give you the money, or what project you're going to work on that they're like, oh, you know what? Like, we have 100K for a low budget feature. Like, you want to do it? And I'd be like, yeah, absolutely. But in the meantime, I just finished post-production on a short film called Little Lucha and the Big Deal with my co-director, Josh Stifter, who I met on Rebel, who was one of the other filmmakers on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And we have, submitted to festivals. And so we're waiting to find out what the premiere for that is going to be. And, hopefully on this festival run, we'll meet people and we'll talk to people about, maybe expanding that. But that one I'm very, very proud of. It's such a heartfelt film.
Mm-hmm.
It's about two early 80s wannabe pro wrestlers. I play one of them. The Big Deal.
Yeah.
And he plays Little Lucha. And it's kind of a metaphor for the journey of the artist, right? Like, how far will you go to make the dream come true? And like that's the whole premise of the film. And I really love it, and I hope audiences love it. And that's next on the docket.
All right. Well, 80s wrestling, that's my wheelhouse. So make sure that gets our way.
I will definitely.
All right. Well, thank you, Scarlett. I love the conversation.
Thank you.
It's a tough road, but it's a rewarding one, and that's why we're here. We want to support filmmakers like you. So thanks so much.
Thank you.